John Stipe, Ray Harrell, Bob King, Tom Ford, Mary Owens, Joe Jay, Andy Smallback. Now here's one I didn't know. This Harry remembered him. His name is Sam Meisenholder. Gary, what year did you hire him, Gary?
56.
You and Harry both hired him at the same time. He told me a few stories about you. Hey, you two went to New
Cincinnati.
York. Went to New York.
Yep, New York.
New York, and Harry ate a hot dog from a stand, got food poisoning, and threw up all night. What he was having. There's such stories as that. That's what you're talking about.
We are live right now, saving stories.
Okay. There's a Fred Sparks. Leon, go ahead.
Don Wilson.
Don Wilson. Yep, Don Wilson.
George Braun.
George Braun. I've got George Braun on here. Dick Clark, Tom Ansel, Bill Triber.
Got Ray Harrell.
I've got Ray Harrell. Chuck Newmeyer. There was a Debbie Payne.
Yeah.
Debbie was a black gal that worked for Eastern Airlines, came over to TWA.
Then she went to US Air.
Then she ended up with US Air. Her husband was a sky captain out there at the airport. Bill Lapine. How many of you here remember Bill Lapine?
Yeah, Bill Lapine.
Bill Lapine quit TWA when the computers came in. Coming out right? Bill Lapine quit TWA when the computers came in. He did.
Is Jerry Miller's name on there too?
Yeah, you've got it on the roster. I
Is
believe.
it on the roster?
Here's one that Harold Atkins is not here. I don't know whether Diggs probably would have remembered him. Bob Kane.
Yeah.
Bob Kane was a mechanic before I got there. I came in '59. People like that, see, the maintenance. Harold Atkins would be the only one to remember Bob Kane, I'm sure. But he was a mechanic.
He lived across the street from the airport.
Yep. You remember that, Sean?
Bob King did.
Bob Kane lived right across from the airport.
Yep.
What's another story about Bob? Like, what's something you remember him doing? Or
Bob Kane?
Yeah. What's
I don't remember him. He left before, I think he ended up in Florida. Transferred to Florida, I believe, is what Harry said.
Well, let me interrupt you. So, what was your position
I
with
was
TWA?
customer service.
You're in customer service.
Customer service.
So, what's the weirdest thing you remember a customer asking for so that they lost? What's something that just stood out and you're like, you couldn't even, we don't want to deal with
a
it?
guy by the name of Fred Wickershot.
No.
Fred Wickershot, working the counter. He was working there when the last flight came in, and a guy lost a bag. And he asked him, I want that bag and I want it tonight. Fred said, you're not going to get that bag tonight. There's no way you're going to get it. I don't care. I want that bag tonight. And he says, I want to see the supervisor. Fred went in the back room, put on a hat, came out. The guy says, why'd you do that? He says, I'm the only one here. I'm the supervisor of everything. You have to know Fred Wickerside. You have to know Fred Wickerside. He says, I want that guy. Oh, Fred said, okay. What color bag? He said, a brown one.
Don't squat. Oh, you're through.
Brown one? How many handles it had? It had two handles. Two handles? Yeah. Had a lock? Yeah, I had a lock. He asked Fred, he said, what in the hell are you doing? He says, the only way you're going to get one from me to shit one. Now that's what Fred told the story. Now whether it was true or not, I don't know. But Fred Wickershide, he was everything at TWA that night. But there's stories out there that if they're not told, we're not going to get them. We're not going to get them.
I got to tell one that Bob told me. That it was the smallest plane you guys got. There was a woman that was extremely large for a human, just in general, and she got stuck because of the suction on the seat. everybody got off the plane, and they had to have the little person mechanic come in and climb over the top of her and go back behind her to undo the bolts. And the seat was still stuck when they took her off the plane. But that's in Bob's interview that you can listen to. That's hilarious, along with some other. But go ahead, Dave.
There's another story, I believe it was Dave Klein, a lady, a passenger, lost a wedding ring down in the laboratory. And they did some fishing for it after the flight came in.
Seriously.
And they found the ring. I think Dave Klein was involved in it.
Jim, our Circe.
Seriously was involved.
Circe was there. He was the one that, if you remember, anybody that when I started on the ramp. Did everything, load, unload, fuel, all of it.
Honey bucket.
Then the honey bucket.
And that's where you found it.
Circe came up there,
Well,
pulled it,
yeah.
went all over the ramp, and found the ring. Found the ring.
Yep.
Went right, now you know what kind of a job that was. I had.
Kind of a shitty job.
I've worked when the Martins were still there, and the crappers and the Martins, you lifted them up, and they were about 3 inches off your nose. Down the stairs and dump them. That's how you empty on a Martin. And the Connies, some of them were that way. Some of them you had to do it that way. I've seen nobody wanted to do that job in the wintertime especially. And I've seen it that float close coming over the top. And you'd have to get it out of there. That's one of the shitty jobs that each and every one of us that worked the ramp ended up doing.
This is where I was the day after, the same day as the race, and we had a 727 stretch, and they substituted a standard, smaller. And of course, couldn't accommodate the people. Wickerside was down there. He said, well, the only thing I know to do is hold a raffle. So we got this guy's hat. He said, I need a hat. We did the guy's hat. He put all the tickets in his hat. And he started drawing out names. And they boarded the flight full.
That's right.
And they ruined the guy's hat, all that red carbon paper. But Wickerside, that's the way it was. He said, that's the only way I know to do is just have a raffle.
He had everything
And if you're
going.
not called, you stay here.
Well, he was friends with Dick Blitzer too, wasn't he?
Yeah.
One thing he wasn't afraid of, I mean, Freddie was there.
He
Not
was,
like the funky chicken, what was his name? Billy. You'd have trouble, he'd be down, look at the, downstairs in operations or something. I said, come on.
Fred Wickerside was involved in a lot of that stuff, and when he told the story, I can't do it. I can't trust him about it like he could. He made it. You were right there. You were watching.
Wicks, yeah.
He had false teeth. He's down there at gate 10 and ladies and gentlemen, due to circumstances beyond our control, and about that time he spit out his teeth. Old Fred just walked over, picked them up, wiped them off, put them back in his mouth, and the people were dying laughing. But he had their attention and they listened to everything he said. Now that was Fred Wickerside.
Yeah.
Remember Daryl Leeds, the Connies used to have what? 2 donut valves. He went out there and whatever upstation didn't put the donut back in. So when he opened it,
It came out.
it came down. So he goes in, cleans all, changes clothes, nice and stuff. Everything, toilet paper, whatever it was, hanging there. It got all cleaned up, came out, went on the other side of the airplane, and said the same damn thing.
Yep. Daryl Dietz. I got a story about Daryl Dietz. Daryl Dietz worked the ramp. He was a mason. That's it. He was a mason. Okay, he became a mason and everything. Well, later down the road, he married a lady that was a Catholic. And he joins the Catholic Church, of course, to be married. And I told Daryl, I said, when you go to, if you ever get there, I said, they're going to have to look it up because you've been in both. You've been a Mason, you've been a Catholic, you ought to get there some way. That was Daryl Dietz. In these albums over here, you'll see the ramp guys laying back, Asleep and Everything, that's part of, in that album. Those albums, Bob Ashby, he was the first guy that I remember when I hired in, was Bob Ashby. But he started that album and passed it on, and I added to it. If anybody's got pictures or stories about this, bring them in, put them in that album. Shelton's got them, and if we go to Harry Williford's house, he lives south of Pittsburgh, and I plan on going over to see him and taking these albums to spend the day with him. I can't think of anything else. Herbie, you got stories?
Carl Everton.
Carl Everton.
Yeah. I hired on.
Bart Everton.
They had a Connie come in, and you know the front belly was about the size of that table.
Mm-hmm.
And they had, so they put me up there. I'm 6'5". He said, go up there. He said, so I'm up there bent like a pretzel, trying to get together.
40 pound boxes.
I can hear
boxes.
Everton down there going, got the big boy, got the big I know I'm gonna die.
That's funny.
But he, and then we had the traders that come in there, and Everton was on there and had a great big piece of freight, and had a big door on the side of the Connie, and he was behind it trying to move it. He looked up at me and he said, "That's okay, big fella, just stand right there." He said, "I got this." You know? And he was pushing, hell, I don't know what the hell he's doing. I was first day. He's pushing. Everything's good, you know, you stand. Finally, he said, "God damn it, I need some help." But that was Everton, man. That was nuts. Yeah,
Yeah, there was, you talk about Everton, now there was a gambler. Carl Everton, Jack May, Ray Gardner, Browning, Dave Brown. There's 4 of them that I can think of that whenever one of them went, all of them went. Whether it was golfing, horse track, card game, those 4 were there. That was Carl Everton, Jack May. And bring back, if we don't tell these stories, it refreshes you, it gives,
I played golf with it.
make you remember things that's happened. You take Digger back here. Okay, here's one on Digger. Digger, the mechanic, leading in, kicking out, any maintenance had to be done, he could. Okay. They pulled the stairs off of this Connie, and Jack's out there gonna kick the flight out. And this guy comes running down, and he missed the flight. And cussing, you can imagine he's cussing and everything. And he heads for Jack Diggs. Heads for him. What does Jack do? Pulls out his screwdriver. You remember that, Jack? Remember that? Jack, that's what I remember about Jack Diggs. He was there, you know, Jack had nothing to do with the flight as far as him missing the flight. The guy was just mad and was gonna take that on Jack. That's what I remember about Jack May, or about Jack Diggs. A lot of memories, a lot of stories. People that can remember it and talk about it was a guy by the name of Woodlock, Jim Woodlock. He'd be pushing through. He worked baggage service over in St. Louis for many years. Commuted back and forth. And they were married up till the end. Both of them died within a few years. I can't remember when.
Months.
But they
Few months apart.
few months apart. For a marriage to make it, to commute as long as Jim Woodlock, that's quite an accomplishment right there, I think. This guy here commuted for 11 years. Finally gave it up, retired from TWA and went to work again.
I played golf with Everton, Ray Gardner, me, and Brownie. But we had the threesome, And Brownie hadn't shown up yet, so we, so we get off. Here comes Brownie. He pull up his car. He still had his uniform on. He's running up there. He's got this old nasty bag. It's all ripped, and he had no head covers on it. And the binding on his driver was loose. Anyway, he gets up. I said, "We've already hit." He said, "Okay." He tees up. He swings, and the head of his driver come off. And the head of his driver goes down the fairway longer than the ball. And Everton, he said, "God damn it." He said, "I'm not playing with this son of a bitch." And he left. He walked off. I said, really, Brownie was something else. Oh, he was.
Brownie, I tried to get him to come to these functions. I haven't this last year or so. Brownie says, "I'll be there, bud, I'll be there." Well, he never shows up. He's got good intentions.
I think he did attend one, but I don't know when.
Now, at one time, his son died, which was named Dave Brown. And everybody thought it was Brownie, but it wasn't, it was his son. Brownie's still alive as far as I know.
No,
He's
he's not.
not? Brownie died? Do you know when? How long ago?
No, I don't remember, because I know his wife.
Brownie is not?
Because I know his wife. His wife's been here.
Oh, that's Brownie Lee.
That's Lehman.
That's
Oh, the wrong
Lehman.
one?
Yeah, the
This
wrong
is
one.
Dave
Brown.
Brown.
This is
Dave
Dave
Brown.
This is
This is
Dave
Dave
Brown.
Oh, I said the
Yeah,
same
there was
thing.
two Brownies.
Okay, I knew that.
Brownie Lehman,
I said the
I've
same
got a
thing.
record
I'm
of him
sorry,
passing
wrong
away.
one.
Dave Brown, as far as I know, is still alive.
You're probably true.
Is
Brownie
that
leaves
on the
again, put a
roster?
chalk mark on the ground and make sure he's moving.
Brownie Lee.
Brownie, but
Well, Brownie was something else. He worked there, Fred. You come in with a car problem, bring it into Fred's shed, Brownie'd work on it. Remember that?
yeah.
Yep.
He'd work on it, right there. Uniform and all, didn't make any difference to Brownie. He'd get underneath there and whatever had to be done, he'd do it. But those are some of the stories that I remember.
Some of it was, Trudy Roush used to be station manager. If I remember. Trudy.
Oh,
I've been at the gate one time and there's an airplane parked out there and pretty soon a passenger come running up there. There's something coming out of that wing down there. And Trudy, "Oh, that's just water." I said, "Okay." "No, this is the station manager. That's just water." "Oh, okay." Pretty soon the fire trucks show up. Well, it wasn't water, it was fuel coming over on the, on the other side. He come back up, he just gave her, "You lied to me, didn't you?" It was fuel coming
It
out
was
of the
fuel
wing.
coming out.
wow. That'd be dangerous.
It is.
See, that story reminds me of another story. Had a mechanic by the name of Max Gardner.
Max Gardner, like cloud Max.
Anything gonna happen, it would happen to Max.
Yep.
Well, we had a guy by the name of Bob Crouch that was fueling. Usually on a 707, you fuel both sides at the same time to keep it even. Well, one of the trucks were broke, so we were using one truck. This was a flight to Los Angeles, I think, heavy fuel load. So Crouch goes out there and starts fueling on one wing. And of course, the airplane's like this, and as he fuels, you're putting on all this tonnage. It's like that. Max Gardner walks out there, there's about that much strut left on one, and the other one, the strut, where the wheels are, it was up about like that, and Max had a heart attack right then. But Max Gardner. Anything would happen, Black Cloud was there.
Don Bone beat that one.
Okay?
Don Bone was fueling the same way down there at the old gate 31. Wait, no, what were those low one-story gates down there? Where the
You're talking about the old terminal.
The old terminal.
10. There was 10,
10
9,
down at the end.
9 or 10, I
Yeah,
can't.
down at the end. He's fueling that ramp up there next to the building is a little bit higher. The 707 was there, and he was fueling next to the building first. With it on the 707, and the wing came down on top of the truck.
Is that right?
And they had to go get another truck to balance it out. Well, in the meantime, the reason that happened, he fell asleep. Well, it's still. After it was all done, Bob King was the supervisor. He came in there and called Don in there to the office and just chewed him out and everything, and he fell asleep while being chewed out.
That's how that come of our guys. A fuel one time, so way on you at the gauge, they had a light up about the fuel gauge or something like that. And Charlie was running around like a crazy man, said, "You're going to have the fuel, want to take a delay?" The captain said, "You know, he just got in the cockpit, he just transferred the fuel from one to here, you know, but it didn't take a delay." But Charlie was going, go crazy.
Charlie Stewart brings up another thought. Charlie took me in for evaluation or talking to me or something. He says, the airline, there's one thing, is the abnormal. He says, the airline is, whatever's gonna happen, it'll happen sometime in your lifetime. The only thing normal is the abnormal. That's what he said. Anything normal is abnormal. And he was right. There's no 2 days are alike. Here's another one. Herb Crouch. How many in here remember Herb Crouch? Story after story after story, Herbie could tell. I miss that guy too. He was another one that could tell stories. And he started on the ramp. I don't think he was ground service when I came there. Was it ground service? Is that what they called it?
Yeah.
Ground service? He never went to ramp service. But he was ground service. Carl Everton, Bob Summers, Daryl Dietz. Well, Ashby didn't fuel.
I get up in St. Louis. Did you know Katie Lewandowski, the supervisor up on the, by any chance, did you? Katie, called her Katie Lewandowski, she was the supervisor, you know. I'm working the L1011 at gate 31, you know, the first gate. And hot, I mean, it was hotter than hell. And pulling non-revs off, putting people on, and then we kicked the flight out. Katie called me from the counter. I mean, not the lectern at the door, but you know, she called me and she said, "Herb," she said, "I just want to tell you, you've done a nice job." You know, I didn't know where else she was at really, but she said, "You've done a nice job." She said, "The only thing that I had to say is you didn't have your coat buttoned." I got damn near passed out. I took that damn phone, I swung. Yeah, she was concerned because my coat wasn't buttoned.
Oh my.
And I was sweating like a dog.
Herbie sweats like a racehorse.
I did. I was sweating.
His jacket would be stained.
She told me my coat wasn't buttoned.
Yeah.
Same thing with Small Mac when he come by the counter, you know, it's hot. We had to wear coats. He said, "Herb, button your coat." So I buttoned it, and he walked down, and I unbuttoned it. He come back the other way. He said, "Herb, I told you to button your coat." I said, "Well, you button yours and I'll button mine." And I got and his face started getting red. He said, "You button it or I'll fire you." Button my coat. But then big old fat, you know, Small Mac had a gut like that.
I'm looking here, there's nobody that,
I mean, really.
Shop would remember.
But
We had one guy on the ramp that lost his job for not wearing his hat to the,
Jack
get
Fisher.
caught. Jack Fisher.
Yeah,
Jack Fisher lost his job. Bob King fired him.
did he?
Yeah.
You know where all that started? Franklin. J. Everett Franklin. You guys remember him?
Yeah, he's in there every now and then.
That jackass. I couldn't stand him. All right? He was a good pilot, but that was it. All right, his social skills and his camaraderie was absolutely lousy. But what Franklin would do, he'd get off a flight. We'd be San Fran, LA, wherever we were. He's still working the flight. He's coming down the steps after everyone's already disembarked and whatnot. And he's giving us mechanics and ramp guys grief about not having our shirts buttoned up all the way. Okay, now out on the West Coast, sometimes you can wear your ID out here in your sleeve. All right, they had them set up like that. Most of us had to clip onto the pocket. So some guys had them out there. Frank was in there saying, I'm gonna raise you guys up, your ID is not in the right place. I'm like, who is this guy? And when I listen to you guys, it's hard to believe, but throughout the system, TWA actually employed people to do just that. Damn the significance of the airline. They're checking to make sure your shirt's buttoned.
Yep.
Yeah, and you're getting paid to do this? Man, get out of here. But Frankum, if any of you had the unfortunate experience to work with J. Edward Frankum, that man cost a lot of people their jobs, all over appearance.
Yeah.
Okay, whether you were ramp, cargo, aircraft maintenance, commissary. As far as I'm concerned, it's like, listen, your job is to fly the airplane. Stay in your lane. Okay. Yeah. So J. Edward Frankum, he was a piece of work.
He was.
He was a piece of, well, I'll say it. He was a piece of shit. Okay, I'll say it. All right.
We had Frankum here quite a bit. His
Oh,
brother
I'm sorry to hear that.
his brother lived in Vincennes. That's what Dave remembers.
Yeah, he was something else.
I'm trying to find a
TWA. And he was.
I'm looking for a first name for a guy by the name of Moorfield.
Joe?
Joe Moorfield.
Oh,
You remember him?
Yeah.
I do. He used to be in the scouts, you know, one of the scout leaders for Boy Scout troop.
Anybody else got any?
St. Louis, we used to get charters all the time, sports teams charters.
Yep.
And the charters would always be stocked with really good stuff, like lobster. And filet mignons and stuff like that.
Yes, they were.
And we had this one guy, I can't even remember his name, we called him Big Hungry. Great big guy, you know, 6'5" or whatever, and he could put some food away. Anyways, flagging the airplane in, you know, normally use the wands, and he was using a knife and a fork and a napkin in there. Captain says when he saw him, he was laughing so hard he almost lost the tiller. You know?
Right.
He just flagged him in there with a knife and a fork.
I believe it. I believe it. There were times where we couldn't get the passengers off the airplane fast enough so we can get in there and raid the galleys.
Yep.
Okay? Because we had some damn good food.
Yeah.
And if you're fortunate enough to work on any of the international stations, be it LAX, San Fran, JFK, whatnot, oh man, 843 would come in, you had rack of lamb, you had roast duck, you had filet mignon, you had lobster Newburgh. Now this was all on one flight.
Now that was
So you had these to choose from. So yeah, we couldn't wait to get that airplane in the gate. You know, we had.
That brought a lot of passengers to TWA. Was the menu that we had.
That's right.
I'll tell you,
That's right. Our
the
Royal
best one
Ambassador.
of all. That's when me, Jerry Banks, Dave Klein was going out to a basketball tournament out in LA. And they was on strike and all that was going on. Freighter come in. We asked the captain if we could ride on the freighter.
Right.
And he
that.
said, well, I'll tell you. He said, it's not really, I couldn't do it, but he said, if I don't see you, you know, something like that. So he kind of turned his back. So we all went up and got on the freighter. We took off. We're flying out to LA. And I'm sitting up there in the seat, you know, in the middle. And the captain was talking to me and he was smoking a cigarette. And he was telling me this and that. All of a sudden I hear Banks. Her. And Dave Klein went into oxygen, lack of oxygen, and he was up on the netting, you know, right there.
Having a seizure.
And having a seizure. And I run back here, and I get a hold of him, I get him down, and I thought maybe he swallowed his tongue. And I'm trying to get his mouth open, you know, see if he swallowed his tongue. The flight engineer, he gets up, he gets a thing of oxygen, puts it on Klein, and you can see his chest go. So anyway, he was out all the time. We landed in LA, and when we did, Klein goes, oh, he said, well, he said, you son of a bitch. He worked a double in order to go out to LA to play basketball. And anyway, we got off the airplane, and I said something to the captain. He wouldn't speak to us. He thought that's the last time that captain ever let anyone fly on his airplane.
He had to divert someplace.
Yeah, that was, I mean, it was scary. I thought, man, they declined.
Got a story.
To show you how desperate the TWA was for maintenance people, I went to work for them in 1960. And I got my A&E license and I put my application in for TWA, but they wasn't hiring right then, they said. So I went to work for Bosco Turner, and you probably all heard of him. I was working down there, and they called me in a week and said, "Will you come to work for TWA?" And I said, "Well," "I'm working with Bosco Turner right now." I said, "I ought to give them notice anyway. I'm gonna quit because I just went to work for him." And he said, "We'll just put you on the payroll." He said, "You come to work next week." And probably there was only 2 people at that time that knew that. Of course, all you people know it now. So I worked for TWA for a whole week, and I wasn't even there. That was in 1960.
Did you get paid for that week?
Yeah.
Great.
See, this is great.
That's the reason
One
TWA
person will
isn't
remember a
functioning
story,
anymore.
Sandy's gonna bring something else up.
Well, that's kind of the point of the whole thing, right? Like even when we're doing individuals, once you start thinking of one thing and we walk you through a conversation, you'll think of something else and something else. And by the end of it, I don't care if it's about your mom, about your kids, or about TWA, you've walked through a whole long road of a whole lot of stuff in a short amount of time. And if you were just by yourself trying to think of the stuff, it's a lot harder than getting prompted through conversation or through kind of a group chat thing. So that's why I think each meeting, this is going to be neat, but it's also going to be cool for you guys to be able to really hear each other's individuals' stories and, like, you know, the crazy things, the good things, the bad things. Even some people touch on Fight 800. You know, I mean, Pam was kind of real about that on her video interview call from the museum. Greg kind of touched on it, and actually, I'm gonna close this up, but.